The underwater world contains an incredible amount of secrets and mysteries left by people for the entire era of mankind. Underwater archaeology, treasure hunters, and adventurers are trying to unravel them. As a rule, these secrets are associated with sunken ships that ended up in the kingdom of the ancient Greek god Poseidon under various circumstances. In this video, I will show you an ancient image of a ghost and tell you about finds that you will definitely love. Hi friend, you're on the KirTop channel. Artifacts at the bottom of the lake. Scientists have found artifacts of obsidian tools 9,000 years old in Lake Huron, which are located more than 4,000 kilometers from their place of origin. Found in an underwater archaeological site in Lake Huron, these obsidian fragments are the oldest eastern obsidian specimens from the western United States ever found in the continental United States. According to the researchers, thanks to these tiny obsidian artifacts, it is possible to better understand the social connections in North America 9,000 years ago. In addition, archaeologists have found hunters' huts at a depth of 30 meters underwater. Previously, the water level in this place was much lower. Directly, these artifacts are important as they indicate the relevance of underwater archaeology. Note that obsidian is an igneous rock, a type of volcanic glass formed as a result of the rapid cooling of lava. The largest hoard of Anglo-Saxon gold coins. 4 gold items and 131 coins were discovered in a field in the west of Norfolk. The person who found the treasure wished to remain anonymous. It is known that he or she found the valuables with a metal detector and then notified the relevant authorities. Another 10 coins were found by a policeman who tried to sell them. As a result of illegal actions, he was taken into custody and will remain in prison for 16 months. Gareth Williams, an early medieval coinage specialist at the British Museum, noted that it is an extremely important find dating back to the same era as a Sutton Hoo burial in Suffolk, where the intact funerary ship was found. The first gold coin on the Norfolk field was discovered in 1991, but it wasn't until 2014 that new artifacts were found dating back to around 610 AD. Some coins were minted in the Byzantine Empire, but most are from the Merovingian kingdom. Egyptian anchor depicting the goddess of writing. The discovered object was a unique 3,400-year-old Egyptian anchor decorated with images of the goddess Sisha. The ancient anchor was made from a whole piece of limestone, had the shape of a trapezoid with rounded corners. From the edge at the top, there was a hole through which a rope was threaded. Scientists who arrived at the scene suggested that the anchor was discovered due to a recent storm. The element washed away the top layer of sand in which the anchor was buried for more than 3,000 years. Historians have theorized that the anchor was used by a ship in the Bronze Age and may have been lost in a shipwreck. Previously, similar anchors have already been found in this area, but this one is unique in that it contains inscriptions that could have been taken from the wall inside the temple. This find raised many questions. For example, where did the engraved stone come from and what it was before, where the ship was heading and what was its type? The most unusual symbol at the anchor was the woman writing on the table. According to historians, it was the goddess Sisha herself, the ancient Egyptian goddess of writing. In ancient times, the Egyptians worshipped her and built temples in her honor. She was not only a divine chronicle but also the owner of libraries. When examining the anchor, archaeologists noticed that the goddess's face was very clear. This suggests that the slab was reused and was previously a sacred item that collapsed in the aftermath of the earthquake. Fossilized fish high in the Himalayas. The mighty Himalayas, also known as the roof of the world, rise to incredible heights, sometimes disappearing among the clouds. It is home to some of the highest peaks, including Mount Everest, which stands at 8,849 meters and is the tallest mountain in the world. At these record heights, the air is thin and the temperatures are extreme. The land is arid, bare rocks, and it seems that it has been so since time immemorial. We say it seems because here, hundreds of kilometers from the nearest sea, researchers stumble upon marine fossils. The Spiti Valley is replete with fossil evidence dating back 540 million years ago, which attracts paleontologists from all over the world. In Nepal, fossils of ammonites, marine cephalopods with shells, are found along the Dagger River, In addition, the brave climbers who visited the summit of Everest brought with them fragments of rock in which fossils of sea lilies were found. It's hard to imagine that this vast expanse of our planet was once the bottom of the ocean with fish and other sea creatures. Billions of years ago, there was a major geological event called continental drift. Before this, world in which we know it did not exist. Instead, there were supercontinents or giant land masses that were part of the continents. And after this, you begin to believe more in the reality of the great biblical flood. The oldest image of a ghost. The British Museum has found the oldest image of a ghost on a 3,500-year-old Babylonian tablet from the collection. The drawing was noticed by Irvin Finkel, senior curator of the Middle Eastern Arts Department. The tablet came to the museum in the 19th century, along with thousands of other tablets from Babylon. The artifact is quite small, easily fits in the palm of your hand, and is broken off from above. At least half of the plate is missing. The curator knew that the tablet was cuneiform describing the ritual of casting out a ghost, but he first noticed the accompanying drawing when he was doing research for his book, The First Ghost. In the figure, a woman on a rope leads a ghost of a bearded man to the afterlife. Thin lines are almost impossible to see with the naked eye, but this is clearly a plot from the ritual described below. Anyone wishing to exorcise the ghost had to make figures of a man and a woman and equip them with specific objects, provide a man with food and a woman with household items. At dawn, the figures were to be buried together under the spell. The spell begins with a call to the Babylonian sun god Shamash, who accompanied the spirits to the afterlife. Unfortunately, the rest of the spell is lost, but it is known that the ritual was not symbolic. The exorcist had to transfer the spirit to the figurine so that the spirit could leave with the blessing of Shamash. The last line of the ritual reads, "Don't look back." According to the curator, this warning was most likely intended for the figurines when they inhaled into the afterlife, but perhaps this exorcist should not have looked back when he left the burial place. 12 tombs that belong to the same family. In Jinan, the capital of Shandong province in eastern China, archaeologists have discovered a group of 12 tombs dating back to the Yuan dynasty. The inscriptions found in the tombs indicate that they all belong to the same noble Go family, who lived during the late Yuan dynasty. 11 of the 12 tombs are exquisitely decorated with frescoes and built of bricks. One is made of stone. The 12 tombs are part of a group of 35 tombs of varying ages that have been unearthed at the site since excavations began in April. It is the largest group of Yuan-era brick tombs discovered in Shandong. The brick walls were imposed with a chisel. The painting enhanced the three-dimensional relief effect. The tombs were arranged in an orderly and seemingly planned manner, and some of their owners were blood relatives, which provided new material for the study of family cemeteries during the Yuan dynasty. During the excavations, more than 60 pottery and porcelain items, bronze mirrors, copper coins, and other cultural relics have been discovered that will help in the study of material culture during the reign of the Yuan dynasty in this region and its surroundings. Earthquake in Cyprus over 1,600 years ago. Archaeologists have examined human remains found during excavations of a former market building in the ancient city of Kirion. It turned out that a fairly healthy man, aged 27-30 years, died as a result of the collapse of a building during an earthquake in the middle of the 4th century AD. Scientists managed to find numerous death fractures of the bones of the skull, arms, and ribs resulting from the collapse of the stone walls. In the vicinity of the modern city of Limassol, in the southwest of Cyprus, is the ancient city of Kirion, the first settlement on the site of which arose in the Neolithic and Chalcolithic times. However, as an urban center, Kirion was formed most likely by the 13th century BC. During the first millennium BC, the city was subordinated to the Assyrians, Egyptians, Persians, and Ptolemies several times, until at the end of the 1st century BC, it was finally annexed to the Roman Empire. In the 4th century AD, the city suffered from a series of strong earthquakes, the most powerful of which occurred around 365 AD, and was virtually completely destroyed and rebuilt. It finally ceased to exist already in the Byzantine era. The ruins of the ancient city have attracted the attention of travelers, researchers, and amateur archaeologists long before the advent of modern philo-archaeology. This was largely due to the picturesque location of the Acropolis, as well as the large number of ruins and rock-cut tombs that attracted many people in search of precious artifacts or antiques for resale to collectors. Temple complex Prambanan. The Indian temple complex Prambanan, according to the most reliable data, was built around the 10th century AD. The construction of magnificent buildings was sponsored by Rake Pegatan, the ruler of the state of Mataram. Given the age of the buildings, it is not surprising that only pitiful rubble has survived to this day. Fortunately, at the beginning of the last century, the Dutch got down to business and temples were restored. There is an interesting legend associated with the construction of this complex. According to it, the temple with 1,000 statues was erected at the whim of Jogran, the girl with whom Prince Bandung Bondowoso fell in love. Jogran, not wanting to accept his proposal for marriage, but at the same time not being able to refuse outright, set a condition. Bandung can become her husband only if she manages to build a temple and 1,000 statues overnight. Surprisingly, the young man almost did it, and Jogran, in order not to fulfill the promise, decided to deceive him. In order to simulate the coming of dawn, she resorted to the help of the locals, who lit many fires for the light. The enraged Bandung stopped at 999 statues and cursed the deceiver, so much so that she petrified forever, turning into the missing southern statue. Milk tooth of a Neanderthal child. Paleoanthropologists have discovered a milk tooth in Iran that belonged to a 6-year-old Neanderthal child. Radiocarbon dating showed that he lived about 41,000 years ago. This is the second find of the remains of Neanderthals in Iran. The extinction of Neanderthals is one of the key challenges facing paleoanthropologists. Improved accelerator mass spectrometry techniques allowed scientists in 2014 to obtain 40 reliable dates for key archaeological sites of the Mousterian and Neanderthals that inhabited Europe. The tooth at the lower left deciduous canine and consists of a well-preserved crown at about 1/4 of the root. Paleoanthropologists noted that during the study of the find, neither caries nor animal hypoplasia could be found. The surface of the tooth appeared to be worn out with exposed denting. Morphological analysis showed that the tooth belonged to a Neanderthal child about 6 years old. Radiocarbon dating has shown that Neanderthals were present in the central Zagros about 41,000 years ago. Antique iron dagger. An amateur archaeologist from Switzerland discovered an ornate dagger that was wielded by a Roman soldier 2,000 years ago. Later, at the same place, a group of archaeologists found hundreds of artifacts on the lost battlefield, where Roman legionnaires fought the Rata warriors when the Roman Empire tried to consolidate power in the region. Archaeologists believe that one of the legionnaires may have deliberately buried the dagger after the battle in gratitude for the victory. Only 4 of these daggers, with distinctive features such as a cruciform hilt, have ever been found in the former Roman territories. The dagger was found in an unusual place. Lucas Schmidt, then still a dental student, began exploring an area near the mountain village of Tiefenkastel in southern Switzerland, the canton of Graubünden, in the spring of 2018. During archaeological excavations in 2003, archaeologists found traces of an ancient Roman army nearby, and it was assumed that the entire area had already been cleared of any artifacts. However, Schmidt took a metal detector and went to look for artifacts. As a result, he found a dagger decorated with inlay of silver and brass on a small hill near the river Gorge in the spring of 2019. At first, his metal detector picked up a very weak signal that indicated a small object. However, when he started digging, he realized that the signal must come from a large object. It is just buried relatively deep. As a result, an amateur archaeologist discovered the dagger at a depth of about 30 centimeters from the surface. Balearic bronze sword. A Balearic sword made of bronze was discovered by archaeologists on the island of Majorca in Spain. Preliminary dating indicated that the weapon was manufactured around 793 BC. The sword is just 93 centimeters long and weighs 1.5 kilograms. The handle and blade of the sword were cast from different alloys. Later, these parts were riveted together. Experts came to the conclusion that the weapon was not combat. Most likely, it was a ceremonial sword. However, if we take into account the fact that the sword was made about 3,200 years ago, then it could be presented as a gift. Specialists in ancient weapons know that only 19 such swords have been found at the moment in the world, and most of them are outside the archaeological context, that is, in later cultural layers. The sword found in Majorca has a triangular blade section. The round handle is equipped with a guard and a pommel. Even in ancient times, the blade broke in half, probably as a result of hitting something hard. Scientists have not yet been able to figure out the purpose of such swords. Their blade was not hardened, which means that such swords were not used in battle. They were of a status or ceremonial nature. The raw materials for the sword were brought from Andalusia. an ancient Roman road found near Venice. At the bottom of the Treporti Canal in the Venetian lagoon, at a depth of several meters, scientists have found unusual ancient structures. We know that long ago the sea level was lower and Venice looked very different from what it is today. Moreover, judging by the artifacts found, the Romans settled on these lands long before the legendary city was found. But some archaeologists believe that all these artifacts came to the territory from other surrounding cities. Back in 1985, scientists discovered something like a road at the bottom of the canal. High-resolution sonar has allowed archaeologists to obtain an accurate map of the seabed, and more than once over the years, from 1978 to 2016, archaeological divers have sunk to the bottom. They saw with their own eyes how it all looks at the bottom and collected samples. Research continued in 2020. It turned out that the road stretched about 1,140 meters along the ancient coast. This conclusion is supported by earlier finds of the proximity of large structures, which most likely were a port, and traces similar to the road were also found in Sanello Canal. It can be assumed that the road at the bottom of the Treporti Canal was part of a whole network of roads in a fairly large port city, and all this confirms the assumption that the Romans not only passed by but also lived on the territory of the Gulf of Venice. Skull of America's oldest leper. American anthropologists examined the skull found on the small Caribbean island of Petite Mastique and found that it belonged to a woman of 20-25 years old who died in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. Scientists diagnosed her with leprosy-related bone abnormalities. This is the oldest such find made in America. The researchers suggested that a leper colony might have functioned on the island. Leprosy has been known since ancient times and is mentioned in written sources of ancient and Eastern civilizations. It is a chronic infectious disease caused by the Mycobacterium leprae. A breakthrough in the treatment of leprosy occurred only in the 1940s when the drug diapson was developed to stop the development of this ailment. The results of the research show that the skull probably belonged to a woman of mixed origin who at the time of her death was about 20-25 years old. Anthropologists have found pathological changes on some bones that could be caused by a number of diseases such as tuberculosis, leprosy, or syphilis. It is good that in our time medicine has already won many terrible diseases. Rate the video with your thumb up or down and write a kind comment in support of the channel. Thanks for your views, bye everyone!